Hi, welcome everybody to this episode 87 of Navigating Now. My name is Amanda Lobo. I'm the Chief of Staff here at Thoughtium, and I am so excited to be joined by a valued member of our community today, Mark Skala. Mark is the founder and creative director of Skalawag Productions. Before we dive in, I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers across all social media channels. We're committed to being here every Thursday live, 3 p.m. Central Time. And so we're so grateful and appreciative to those of you who tune in with us. It's not often that I come to this seat, especially alone, but there have been a couple of members of our community that I've just been so excited to have some one-to-one dialogue with. So without further ado, welcome back to the table, Mark.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, how's it going? So Mark, I've known you for a few years now. We met a few years back while I was playing this chief of staff role at a different company. And you guys came in to reimagine our brand story. And I've never told you this, but I used to try to find ways to be involved in that process because your team was so much fun. It was just so enjoyable to be around you guys, but also your practitionership, like just watching you guys was fascinating. Seeing your process was fascinating. So I want to give a little plug to episode 62, which was the first episode that you were on. You and Anthony dug deep on your practitionership. In the episode was called The Art of Storytelling Through Video. So for our community members tuning in, definitely go check out that episode. It was fantastic. I think we ended up putting that one in our end of year episode, our top 5. So go check that out. Mark was also an attendee of our first ever Create the Space dinner and NFT experience. And Mark just continues to be such an asset to our community. So I appreciate you being here with me today, and thank you for sharing the space.
I hang around. You can't get rid of me.
I love it. We don't want to. So Mark, for those that in our community that don't yet know you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Skalawag Productions?
Yeah, Mark Skala, Skalawag Productions. I am the founder and creative director. Is my title, although I feel like that doesn't encompass exactly everything that I do. I think at the end of the day, we've been around for about 7 years full time. I had the company as sort of a freelance vehicle for since 2009. And at the end of the day, we're a small creative team that works a lot with food and beverage brands, a lot with agencies. We work a lot in education. My background is in education. And we create strategy and video production, full service video production for brands to sort of holistically think about content in a new way. My main goal in life these days is to take brands from creating content occasionally and reactively to becoming a content network. That's the transition and journey that we're trying to take brands on, if that makes sense.
I love that. Makes a lot of sense. Again, if you haven't seen episode 62, go back and check out that episode because we went deep on all of that. Today's episode, though, is titled Pulling Back the Curtain on Small Business Ownership. And one of my favorite things about you, Mark, is your authenticity. You are not afraid to talk about what's hard. And so we're going to do that today. We're going to talk about some of the things about small business ownership that might feel taboo or uncomfortable, even, in the small business owner seat. So where I want to start today is let's talk a little bit about critical shifts. So you've been in business for about 7 years. What is different for you today than maybe a couple, 2-3 years ago?
I think the main thing is proof. I think the difference between pre-COVID life especially and where we were at as a business in 2020, we were hitting Q1 of 2020. We had our best quarter ever, and it was like, oh, we finally did it, right? Oh, heck yeah, here it comes! Finally, all the work is paying off.
Yep.
And I think this story is pretty common, like pre-COVID, right? And then it all kind of went away, and we're like, oh, shit, what do we do? I'm not supposed to swear. And essentially, what I've learned in the last 2 years is that there's no finish line, I don't think. And I think that realization was profound for me because I've been chasing success or some sort of like ending, and that doesn't make any sense in retrospect. But what I will say is we've faced a lot of adversity not as much as some areas of of businesses like restaurants and things like that. That's just massively different in my opinion. But a lot of adversity, and we've pivoted, we've persevered, we've adapted to what the market was saying that we could do, and made it through, and are better for it, even though it was really hard in the moment. A lot throughout different waves and different things, and not just COVID.
Yeah.
Different changes in the organization and on the team and things like that. So I think proof that we can do it, that this is a real business, not just a bunch of people who make videos for fun or anything like that. And that's cool.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious, over the last couple of years, what have you had to let go of?
Perfection. Perfection is one thing that I think over the last couple of years I've really adopted this idea that perfect is the enemy of done. And I don't mean that with client work necessarily. I think when it comes to client work, I do think we really strive for perfection. But when it comes to our internal marketing, our internal messaging, our channels, our social, our websites, we've really embraced the art of experimentation. And if it fails, it fails. Let's learn from it and move on. Which that's another lesson from the last 2 years. Is like, I don't think I had that mindset as much. I might have said I had it, but I don't think I really bought my own bull crap. I think I've really embraced that mentality now, and have really embraced it and sort of broadcasted it to my team as well, so they truly embrace it and are not afraid to make mistakes. That's not to say that we're not careful though, but that's one of the things that I think really we've embraced over the last couple of years, is that idea.
Yeah, well, frankly, that's why I wanted to come to the table with you today, because you've made a commitment to your LinkedIn community that you're going to start sharing more. This title of this episode is called "Pulling Back the Curtain" because you said that on your LinkedIn. I tune into all your posts, and so I appreciate that, and I think that message, I would assume, would resonate with it would be applicable for a lot of small business owners, regardless of industry. The last couple of years have just been really interesting. There's been so little control that we've had to kind of just say, we're going to roll with it and we're going to make it happen. So the resilience is at an all-time high, I think.
Yeah, and pulling back the curtain really comes from something I tell clients a lot to do, and because a lot of brands, especially after they reach a certain size, it becomes beyond the one person who started it, and it's unclear how to create brand personality amongst a ton of different people versus one, right?
Yeah.
And that is something that I think I'm always encouraging people to do, because people want to know what's really going on. They want to know how things really work. They want to know how the sausage gets made, and they want to know the humanity and the story behind what's actually happening. And so I made a commitment to practice what I preach, in regard. And so I talk about that pulling back the curtain a lot when we're doing anything on the internet, frankly. So.
Yeah. Well, it's having an impact for sure. We're tuning into that message, and it's inspiring us to do the same. So keep at it and we'll follow suit as well. I want to talk a little bit. Something I've been trying to do more of is use my voice as a chief of staff, my experience to inspire small business owners, leaders, just to understand that what they're going through is normal. And so I'm trying to normalize a lot of these hard things in business, because I've seen it. I've sat alongside multiple different founders in different industries, and there are a lot of commonalities. So oftentimes there's a lot of pressure that comes with being a small business owner. You are, nobody's asking you how you're doing on a day-to-day basis, yet you're expected to have every solution now. Right? How do you manage that? How do you deal with that? Do you have someone internally that helps you do that? Or are you just innately good at it? Is it an evolved skill?
I think all the above, maybe at different points. One, I think you can't underestimate the power of business coaching. Having someone who is a sounding board and an advocate for you that understands your business, I think is a great asset to have. Another thing is some sort of mastermind or trust group that you can be a part of. It doesn't have to be official. It can just be, having a lunch and talking with other people who are in your position. I think is something that over the years has been truly a treasured resource to work through problems, to work through pressure, to just complain, to just have somebody who gets it, Therapy like is one that I think is like an underestimated power. Just having somebody to be in your court, right? Like to understand the problems and the solutions, and not in a judgmental way, or even in a practical way all the time. Just being able to work through that emotional stress, because the pressure stuff is super real, and I don't think unless you are close to that, like either in an entrepreneur role or close to somebody in that role, or in like an adjacent role, it's really hard to put yourself there and walk in those shoes. And I think having outlets and having conversations with yourself to process that stuff is really important, whether it is from a more practical like business coaching solution or more like emotional support side. I think it's just you have to be able to give yourself cut yourself some slack every now and again as well, and know that you can't possibly get all the to-dos done, and there is another day. And that's not to say you don't work hard. It's just you're gonna be crashing into a wall at some point. If
Yeah, definitely. You got to let the boulder rest, as I say often. It's like, today, that was good enough for today. We're gonna put it down and we'll pick it back up tomorrow for sure. I love your call out on coaching and therapy. Like, it takes a village, and sometimes it takes people outside of your immediate workplace to really be able to work through and process and find perspective. Because if it's someone that's in it with you every single day, it can become an echo chamber. You guys can start to build narratives that maybe are rooted in truth, but they become bigger than they actually are. And so it's really smart. I love the idea of, I mean, I'm obviously pro leadership coaching. We offer that here. But the therapy piece, I think, is such a great call out that probably is overlooked by many, especially from like, I don't have time for this. I don't have an hour in my day to go step away to do this, or whatever the blocker might be. I think it's a great call out. I'm curious, because it takes a high EQ individual to know that you need that help, right? Both in therapy and business coaching, and finding a community outside of your own four walls. Is EQ something that comes easy to you, or is it evolved because you're in this role?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, I think everything evolves. So I think that is part of the equation. But I do also think there is an innate, ability to be able to just handle a lot and make a lot of decisions. But there is such a thing as like decision fatigue. You know what I mean? Where it is like this idea that like at a certain point you can't, like we at home often this comes up where it's like, I've made so many decisions today. Like, what are we having for dinner? Like,
I can't do it.
Like, I can't decide what to make for whatever reason, And that's where I think you have to just watch yourself. And again, like checking in with what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, and being careful not to tell stories about what's happened in your day, about others, especially interpersonally with the team or with clients or with whoever. Don't tell yourself stories that aren't rooted in truth, because that can get away from you big time.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious, pressure builds. Sometimes that impacts how we show up, right? We're not perfect humans either. So what do you do when you completely miss the mark on effective leadership? How do you manage those moments?
That's great.
Because it happens, right? Like, let's be honest.
First, I feel like I try to let it breathe for a minute. First of all, whether that's like you sleep on it, or you try to turn down the temperature, right?
Sure. Yep.
And then it comes down to just very, very open, honest communication. I screwed up. I didn't show up how I wanted to yesterday because this is what's going on in my life, and it's not an excuse, but again, it comes back to these real human moments. Yeah. People can understand having a bad day, and there's this idea, I think, in your more traditional corporate settings where like you just got to button up your shirt and you can't let it show anything, whether you're a employer to employee or employee to employer, like sort of conversation that you are expected to just always like show up the same. That's just not human.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just talking to people and being honest and saying, this is what happened. And
1,000%. I think compartmentalizing was hard pre-COVID and post-COVID. I just like don't think we're even capable of doing it anymore. I'm literally in your house right now. I think that's your house, right? And like it's impossible. We talk about that a lot over here. Like that game has changed and we have seen more of the human side. You know, I remember like early 2020, you know, at the height of the pandemic, like my then boss just had a baby. And so he was on calls like in his home with the baby in his arms. It's like, that's new. That wasn't happening prior to this. Like we were in office 5 days a week, face to face. And so I think it's just getting, we just aren't able to compartmentalize like we used to. And so that human element is more important than ever.
Compartments are full.
They're full. They're full. We're done. Exactly. Okay, I have one more question for you in this kind of pressure realm. I'm trying to normalize how isolating it can feel for a small business owner to be a small business owner. A lot of times you feel like I have to be good at everything. I have to have the answers for everything. I have to wear all these hats. I have to keep all the plates spinning all at once, right? And again, nobody's asking how you're doing or checking in on you because they're expecting you to be that person for them. And I want to normalize like the things that keep us up at night, like the things that worry you, that are on your mind and weigh heavily. So I think by talking about it, we normalize it. So for you, what are those things? What keeps you up at night?
Payroll, incoming, like cash flow. I mean, I think that's everything. That's all business, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
When times are good, times are good. When times aren't good, like full pipeline solves a lot of things on this if you're in a service business. But like at the end of the day, like it's am I doing this the right way? And like that question's stupid because there is no right way. Like this goes back, I think, to this idea that like you're in this one-way ticket where you're arriving at a destination. And unless you're building a company to scale and sell, which like for a company like mine isn't really the goal, like maybe one day when I want to be done with it, but like, you know, there is no, the journey is the point. Like, and yeah, you want to make money and you want to build a team, you want to make great work and you want to do all these things. But like the realization that like, when am I waiting for the stress to end? The stress isn't going to end. I signed up for it. You either are okay with that and you figure out ways and tactics and communities to release and diffuse some of that like energy and negative energy, or you realize that this isn't for you. And I don't mean that like you should give up. Just know that like this is a roller coaster and there's some like great times and there's some rough times. And like, but like I come back to like the idea that like, would I ever like go apply for a job somewhere? Like, no. That's not happening.
You're built for the roller coaster.
Yeah. And that does take, I do think that does take, there is some innate nature about people that do this that I think is there, but I do think you can, like, nobody's bulletproof though. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the times aren't always good. And if you think they are, like you're in for a rude awakening at some point.
Totally.
You know?
Well, and I find over here and various places that I've played this role, like when you master something, if you're a high achiever, you're going to go find new stress. You're going to go find the next thing that's going to keep you up at night. Yeah, totally. I mean, that's why you're in the seat that you're in, right? And so I think your call out of like, it's not going away. It will always be there, whether it's like just the same problem over and over or new ones that you're creating for yourself, they're going to exist.
Yeah, and there's this book I just started reading called Soundtracks, and it's about the power of overthinking. And I think this like it's kind of a stupid book, but it's like there's something profound in the high levelness of it that resonates with me, and essentially all it does is just sort of tries to master your overthinking and turn the volume down on these bad soundtracks that you're playing to yourself of all the worst things that can happen, and try to dial up the good ones and replace them over time and add new ones and switch it out. And again, it's like, it's not even like that, like profound of a concept, but for some reason at this moment in time is resonating with me, because that overthinking turns to fear and turns to anxiety. And that is going to like destroy your life at some point if you don't figure out ways to turn down the soundtrack, if that makes sense. So
1,000%. Okay, so if you take one thing from today's episode, it's figure out how to turn down the soundtrack. We can End it
The
there.
None of the bad ones turn out the good ones, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Amazing. I love all of that. I want to switch into building a team. So I think that building a team is the most exciting part of small business, of growing a small business. I honestly think it's the hardest part, though. And you've proclaimed recently that, I'm reading your quote here, you've been hard at work finding the right blend of team, and you boldly stated that you've got it right. You finally got it right. And that's a bold statement, because it's not easy to do. So I want you to talk us through that journey.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one. Here's the thing. Like, I started this business. I always knew I wanted to build a team. Like, this was never going to be a solopreneur thing. That's
Mm-hmm.
not the direction I wanted to go in. I didn't want to do everything myself. And in filmmaking, you can't do everything yourself. You always have to have people around, whether they're W-2 employees or contractors is another thing. But at the end of the day, I think I have like pretty high emotional intelligence and empathy skills. But at the end of it's people are complicated. And understanding, especially when you're trying to build a business, you have all these stressors. Like, sometimes, like, other people's growth journeys, especially in early stages, are just not as big of a priority as they should be.
Sure.
And there's there's something that happens. There's a trial and error system where you got to kind of like see the other side of like what bad. Like, I've always been in jobs where like generally my team was like people who wanted to work and like do a good job and were good at their jobs and like that sort of thing. And there's just people sometimes that are in the wrong fit, right?
Yeah.
And you have to sort of figure out what makes them tick and what they want to do and where they want to go. And I don't think I was asking myself those questions. I think
Sure.
and it's not to say that I wasn't interested or invested in their growth. I think I was, but it was like I got too many plates spinning in the air, and I can't even think about your growth journey. Like,
Yeah.
it's not.
Totally.
And keep in mind, I was growing the team when I also had newborn twins, and there's just like there wasn't any space for anything else. I was just like on survival mode.
Totally.
And what ends up happening with that is you get people to a place and you work with them for some time, and like it's just it's not the right place for them, or this isn't the right thing, but you start avoiding conflict, and that festers, and you're not setting good expectations, and that festers, and then all of a sudden, like, you're miles away in these situations, and then it all blows up in everybody's face, and nobody wants that. And
Yep.
so there's a couple things that happened, like, in terms of like how I started to really think about, okay, I've always had this thought that I don't even want the best person, the best artist who's going to help me do X, Y, or Z. I want the person who's here to help me build this vision together, right? And
Mhm.
one of the biggest mistakes I had is I didn't have a vision. Like, I was going through the motions, and I was like trying, like, I had like a general direction, and like we were going over there, but like I wasn't broadcasting the vision to
Yep.
the team, and so they had nothing to buy into. And so over time, there's a couple of things. One, it's like, have a real hiring process. I was like a guy, I was like, who do we know that can do this? Like, hey, you want a job? We got money for a job. Let's do this, And that's a bad hiring process, because like, you have to figure out. So like, doing your due diligence, which like seems like common sense, but like frankly, it wasn't common sense to me at the time. And this was
Yeah.
5 years ago. You know what I mean? But like, that, understanding what you're hiring for, not just hard skills. Can you edit a video? Can you produce a video, in my case? But are you adaptable? Are you interested in an environment where you have to wear a lot of hats?
Yep.
Are you ready for the challenges those bring? And are you cool with like how, like, the flexibility of that culture as well? Because it's not all bad, right? Wearing
Mhm.
many hats is great for some people and not great for others.
Yep.
And understanding how to ask those sort of more behavioral attitude vibe questions and get to the bottom of that in an interview, especially in COVID, it was really hard. But after some trial and error and finding some good fits that then just got other great opportunities that, like, hey, you got to go do that. I can't double your salary. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
go.
sure.
Like, that's awesome. Like, I'm bummed, but like, this is how it goes. How do you find the people and the chemistry that works? And a lot of it is like complementary skill sets. So like, you may like this person over here, but do they satisfy the things that you are missing right And that's a personality thing, but it's also like an artistic thing in our case, right?
Sure.
And what are the hard skills and soft skills that you have that are complementary to mine, to everyone else on the team? And there should be some overlap, obviously, but like building that stuff and really trying to get to know people, and also paying attention to the questions that they ask. Because the more thoughtful that the people you're interviewing are, just in terms of building a team, like those are the people that I want around. Like I want you asking the hard questions in an interview, because
Mhm.
I want to tell you very honestly where we're at now and where I want to be and where we're failing. And I want you to process that and take away from it what you will. Hopefully you're taking away that I'm very transparent and authentic, because I think that's my management style. Like I'm clear. And then the other thing about it all is, how do you set expectations? And I come back to this book that my father-in-law gave me years ago, and I was not ready for it. I had the business like on the side, and I was working towards going like full time with it. And it's called, oh man, now I'm gonna forget the name of the book. Oh, how embarrassing! It'll come back to me.
We'll circle back on it.
Yeah, but it's essentially like this idea of like, as a small business owner, you have to be the visionary, you have to be the manager, and you have to be the technician. You have to know how to do all these things. And what I was really missing was this manager part, right? Like I could be the technician, I could be the visionary, but I didn't know how to manage people at all. And I had done some in like in a formal role at the university I worked in when I was like sort of getting my start in video. But like it was mostly students and some people that were colleagues rather than true like employees that I was managing. And you have to sort of learn how to set expectations properly and know what you want, first of all, before you can even set those expectations, and then measure those expectations and track the growth. And this is not like your quarterly review where we just sort of like attribute you a random number to see how much merit increase you get. This is like truly deep diving into like, here's what we wanted to do. Here's what we did. Let's talk about it from a position of like, yeah, maybe we didn't hit the mark on this, but like, what were the good things and how can we learn from the failures here? And setting up that growth mindset and like and making sure all the employees are bought into that and the vision are two of the most super critical things that just transformed how we've hired and how we've figured out how to try to sort of make the best team that we can. And like, we're not done. Like every time you add a new piece to a small company like ours, we've got 5 full-time employees. That's a massive shift in personality that can happen. And so it's really important to like, make sure the chemistry of that is right. And I think it is science, but it's definitely art. There's definitely an art and science like combination that goes into all of that.
I am like, this whole time I've just been shaking my head. Yes. Cause we just recently went through, I could not agree with you more on everything you just said. We just went through a pretty significant recruiting process. We started with 8 full-time employees and we added 5 more. 3 of them have started, 2 more starting in June. And we end of 2021 sat down for our 2022 like strategic imperatives and vision setting and all of that good stuff. And we just had some incredible sessions that like we came out with a really, really beautiful manifesto that was so true to who we are, where we're going. It wasn't just us like pie in the sky, like this is who we want to be. It was like, this is who we are with like some elevation, we're somewhere for us to go. And in that dialogue, we realized that we hadn't really been speaking to our business as a startup. And the expectations, as you know, in a startup are very different than in a big company. And so we literally rolled out a whole dialogue called Thoughtium as a Startup. We like just established some language of where we are, where we're heading. We leveraged that heavily in the recruiting process, and the type of people that we attracted and then hired completely, I mean, just amazing. And so they're going through their onboarding right now. And none of this is a surprise to them because they've already heard it and they bought into it before they were even offered it, in an offer letter. So I couldn't agree more on the vision piece, like know where you're heading. And then that transparency piece, I think, is so important too. It's like we're, letting people know we don't have the roadmap. If you want a roadmap, you have to go to a bigger company or somewhere. We just don't have it. Like, do you want to build it with us? Because if you want to build it with us, like this is a home for you, you know. And so that transparency, yeah, exactly. Get on, let's go. And we're just seeing it pay off in dividends, just in the type of people that are at the table with us now. We'll have to check back in, like maybe at the end of this year when our team is like ramped, because I think it's just going to be you know, similar to what you're experiencing right now. I think we're just going to see huge shifts because we finally have who we are. We're saying it transparently with very clear vision, and we're bringing on people that like get it, love it, and are so in on it. So couldn't agree with you more. That was like what you said was like a master's class in people. It's good.
I mean, it becomes more join us on this journey rather than like do this job, right?
Yeah,
And
like bragging people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to be like, this is not like I'm not saying you need to work 80 hours a week or anything like that. Like that's not the thing. Like how do we just be humans together, find purpose in our work, find that spark that drives us, right, from a work perspective, but also go back home to our families and like be humans and like understand how that can all sort of meld together rather than this like stark line, to go back to what we were saying before, compartmentalizing these things where like, oh, well, I leave this there. That's just not, it's not life. You need to find that balance, and everybody's different. You need to find people that are into the balance that you're bringing to the table, not the balance that they're taking with them from somewhere else or
1,000%.
Environment or whatever. So.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I'm curious. You've got a small team, but culture matters even on a small team, even on a team of 3. It matters. How do you guys approach and just embrace culture, your internal culture at Scalawag?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're consistently building the plane as it's flying. And as I said before, like when you add a new team member, everything can shift a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the biggest thing is, one, just coming back to values, like company values. Like it's like, honestly, 5 years ago I would have rolled my eyes at myself in this situation because company values, like what the frig are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like it's, sorry, I should stop swearing, but it's just like so like when it was just me and like my first employee, Aaron, who's still with us, which he's the best, but like, you know, that seems like kind of like a waste of time, man, you know? And now it's like, this is super important. It's super important that everyone on the team knows what we're all about and can see themselves in the values and can see where that relates in business practices and in human interaction and client work and all these different things. And that's one of the things that I think one of the more like traditional business practices that I've really been a huge proponent of, and something I talk about in interviews, just like you were talking about, sort of prefacing everything with sort of the manifesto and the culture, sort of like, here's who we are and what we're all about. Mm-hmm. Doing that in the interview process has been huge in finding the right people to sort of put things together. And one of the things we do is just like we eat together. Like eating is really important. And like in my philosophy on life, as we've talked about in the past, like this idea of breaking bread and getting to know people over food, I think is a magical experience. And that's one of the ways I think we try to stay human and try to also like not always make it be like, oh, we're going to eat lunch over this meeting. You know, it's more like, can we set aside? And it's hard right now, especially with this COVID wave going on. Like it's really hard to try to make time to do that when things are busy. But it's really important to try to find some consistency in being people together, because that's the thing that keeps people, like, it's one of the things that keeps people in the job too, which is like is even a more important thing, because it is about money, but it's not always just about money. Yeah. Like it is like, do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I contribute? And do I feel like my boss gives me the autonomy to make great creative decisions and leadership decisions and manages me enough to know where we're going, but allows me to sort of work in my own sandbox, because that's where the magic gets made. Yep. And that's where you find really great organizations thriving. And I do think that there's a cap at some point of how many employees you can have before that gets really hard to do. Like these mega corporations, I think it becomes really hard to do that, but I won't go there.
Yeah, 1,000%. It's interesting on the values piece. I think by having strong core values, introducing them in the recruiting process, it makes everything easier because you're
Mhm.
not trying to drag someone along for the ride. Like they're already in, right? So there's enough hard stuff every day in owning, operating, and working for a small business or a startup. Having someone believe in what you're doing should not be one of them. Right.
Right.
Our episode, we did a live episode with Jimmy Graziano, and my favorite, most profound quote from him in that episode was, "You can't teach people to care. I can teach you how to make bread. I can teach you how to make a sandwich. You cannot teach people to care." Right. And so if they're not bought in, you like that, that's not going to be a great hire. It's going to be it's going to be a struggle till the day they're no longer with you. So I love the values call out. Okay. So I think I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I think people that are in large corporations often think that entrepreneurs just get to do like what they love all day long. And it's like this dreamy, rosy, man, I wish I could do that. When in reality, I see it firsthand. I know you know that like you have to do 20 million things a week that are not fun or sexy, but they're important to operating the business, right? So we're going to play a little take it or leave it. I want to know if you could let go of one thing today and your business would still survive, it would thrive, but you never had to do it again, what would it be?
That's a tough one. I'm gonna give myself some time to think about this while I say some other things. But like, essentially, I think that I like the variety of some things, and I like
Mhm.
being able to do a lot of different things. But I do think the one thing that I would give up is probably more of an operations type situation, and like that's one thing that eventually we probably will hire for, where
Yep.
it is like the billing, it is the like day-to-day logistics of some things. One thing I have given up that I absolutely have hired for already was project management, because I
Mm.
know the importance of project management, but I hate it.
Yeah.
And I just want to know that it will get done. I don't need to know the particulars on when each deadline is, but I'm also a big fan. I'm a big believer in process. And so like you have to be the first person in line to say, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we want to do. I'm going to show you what we want, and then you can amend it how we want to, as long as we get to the same destination, right? So like project management is the thing that I have given up that I'm absolutely thrilled that I have. But I think operations would be second. So like billing, some bookkeeping stuff that you can't really have a bookkeeper do because there's too much like
Yeah.
nuance and like, well, what was this charge for, that sort of thing. I would
Yeah.
definitely get all that stuff. But one thing I'll say to expand is like when I started this business, one thing I didn't know that I needed and didn't know that I is this idea of like sales and building things,
Mhm.
building the company, and understanding how important that aspect and the business aspect of running a creative services business is. That's one thing that I thought I don't think like 5 years ago I would have been super into that. Like, it was more like I'm a filmmaker type of thing. But now I really enjoy and
Totally.
I and that's a sort of the reverse of what we're talking about. But
Absolutely. It's not surprising to me that an artist, like we talk a lot about artists and operators here, and we have like a friendly rivalry of the artists and the operators within our team. Anthony, artist, Norm, operator. You've met both of them, probably can see that in their personalities, right? I am for sure an operator. All the things you were saying that like you just don't want to do, that's what
I was
I
actually
am.
what I need is a chief of staff,
Yeah.
isn't it? This is just
Yeah.
a long form to get me to hire a chief of staff, isn't it?
Yeah, this is my master plan to get on the line with you.
Very well
Um, it's not surprising to me that like the operational stuff feels like it like bogs you down, or it just like maybe even stunts creativity at times because you're an artist. And an interesting exercise that we went through with Darren, who you also know, you knew her prior to the dinner, but then also met her at the dinner.
done.
We gave her permission, like she is truly an artist. But she is in the day-to-day of her business 1,000%. And she always felt like she had to be both, or she didn't even like feel like she had permission to say, I'm an artist. She had to be an operator, and she's not. It's not her natural disposition. And we gave her that position, or we gave her that permission to say, you don't have to be or do operations. You know that, right? And she was like, I don't. She's like, oh, I thought it meant I was failing if I wasn't doing it all. And so she's stepping into this like new power in herself of saying like, actually, I am an artist. I do have big vision, and I'm going to get someone else to help me with the stuff that I don't love, that stunts my creativity, that, you know, quite frankly, just like feels burdensome to me. So I love that.
Yep.
Mine would be I would never have to call QuickBooks or our payroll provider ever again. Soul crushing.
Really, yeah. I won't say anything bad about QuickBooks, but
It's rough. Awesome. So we're kind of nearing the end of our time here together. I want to come back to this. You touched on the beginning about defining success. And I'm curious, how are you? We talked about this at the dinner a little bit, and I really liked what you brought to the table, but how are you defining success today? How does it look different than it did maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
it looks a lot different. First of all, I think some of it is, you know, this is a very interesting, deeply emotional and personal issue for me, in the sense that like you start chasing the dragon when you do this, you know, and it's just a matter of like, you have to start defining what success looks like, but understanding, like I said before, that it's not an ending.
Mm-hmm.
There may be many endings, mini endings along the way of different things, whether it's staff, whether it's like clients, and one of the things that I think has been hardest is just not taking everything personally.
Mm-hmm.
Every bit of my DNA is in this business, and a lot of the work that I've been doing in terms of separating success, or like not feeling like I need to get to a certain milestone, is just surrounding this idea of like not trying to chase all these things that are not even like attainable goals a lot of the time.
Sure.
And so when it comes to success, I think the biggest thing I've learned in the last couple of years is like, yeah, you have revenue goals, and like we want to hit certain milestones when it comes to that. But it's more like, let's look internally and look at this house that we've built. And yeah, we could probably fix the windows, and we probably could do, you know, get a new roof. We're going to have to get a new roof eventually and do these things. But like, the foundation is good. And how we build upon that. And how, and this is everything. This is big time. It's team, right? It's the people, because that's the essence of the heart of what we do, and how we solve problems for clients and things. But it's like, how can we be smart about different things in order to provide for those people, in order to create an ecosystem that is safe, an ecosystem that is financially secure, because that's a huge part of it all. And just understanding that like, my personal happiness should not be tied to how much sales we have with the business, right?
Yeah.
And that is a huge, and I'm sure other people can resonate with that, but like separating that thing has been a lot of the work I've been doing over the last year, and just understanding that like, it is not like, my self-worth has nothing to do with that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's allowed me to be a little bit more curious, and find more spark, and not get so bogged down in like, hey, you know, the economy sucks, or there's inflation, or COVID is rampant, and all these things that could affect things, or have affected things. And you know what? We've been through a lot, and we've come out the other end. And it comes back to that soundtrack thing of like, how do I turn down the dial on the fear anxiety soundtrack and turn up the dial on, hey, we've done hard things before, and we can do them again, and we will persevere through them. I will persevere through them with the help of my great village, you know, and
1,000%. I think it's like nearly impossible for small business owners to not tie their entire identity and to the business, right? Because it's your life's work. You put everything into it. It's your baby in some ways, right? So it's a great call out, and I think it's probably a challenge that any small business owner listening to this would say, "Yep, like I know exactly what that means and how that feels." Yeah, finding your self-worth outside of your business and your work is important.
And one of the ways that I think about a lot is like, I really rewind the clock to 10 years ago, you know, and when I was really trying to make this happen, or trying to get to that place where it made sense. I think if I would have told myself to my 10 years ago self, like where I was at with all of this, he would have been thrilled.
Yeah, heck yeah.
And so like, that's one of the ways that you can kind of like come back to like, yeah, this is pretty good. This is great. It's just you keep moving the goalposts on yourself, and it can lead you to a dark place if you don't do some of the things we've talked about throughout this episode of like understanding the separation and having tactics to sort of turn down that bad stuff. So
1000%. Mark, so good. Like, thank you so much for just sharing your perspective. I love your honesty and your willingness just to be candid in these conversations. My goal for today was really to just expose some of the maybe darker what might feel shadowy to small business owners. And I think you just did an amazing job speaking to your experience. And I think that, a lot of people tuning in and watching the playback of this will really resonate with them. So I appreciate your honesty and transparency, and always love coming to the table with you. I would love to do
great moderator.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to do a quick rapid fire.
Yeah.
So like, first thing that comes to your mind when I ask you these questions. Okay, ready? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, ready? What are you reading, watching, or listening to right now?
Right now I'm reading that Soundtracks book. I'm reading a fantasy novel because I'm super into fantasy and sci-fi. And I'm watching The Gilded Age with my wife. That's our current show. Okay,
I love it. What is an ordinary moment in your life that brings you great joy?
Planting my garden with my kids.
Ooh, love that.
That's something that was awesome. Is awesome.
Would you rather travel to the past or the future?
Oh, I don't know. Lately, definitely. I think the past, because frankly, the future right now, I don't know if I have a great trajectory in mind for the future currently.
Oh my gosh. I would beg to differ.
Large scale. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Political.
Love it. What describe your style in 1 to 2 words?
Authentic, I think, is a good one. I like to be authentic, and I think supportive. I want to be supportive.
I think you're doing a great job of that. Did you make your bed this morning?
No.
I love asking that question because of the shame that comes from a person on the receiving end.
It's funny. My wife and I are trying to do it, but my dog always tries to get under the covers, so it feels like a fool's errand.
I love it. So good. All right, one last question. I want you to think about something you admire about yourself and fill in the blank. If the world were more like me, it would be
less chaotic, maybe.
Love it. Maybe. Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for coming to the table with us today. I'm sure we will have you back as a guest again, and we will talk to you soon.
This is great. Love
awesome. Thank you. All right, team. So we will be back here again next week, Thursday, live, 3 p.m. Central Time. And we're actually going to have 3 of our very own coming to the table. So Griff Krenbrink, Anthony Ewing, and Rachel Guile will be coming to the roundtable to discuss our favorite industry report of the year, the 2022 LinkedIn Workplace Learning Report Breakdown. So you won't want to miss it. Thanks, as always, for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week.